Right. Hey, folks. So today I broke my metabolism. My metabolism is broke. I'm going to be dispelling that common myth and talk to you a little bit about what you can do to ensure that your metabolism is humming as fast as it possibly can. So firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. And if you'd like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals, there's a link in the description. Okay, so firstly, I thought it would be a good idea to touch a bit on what the metabolism actually is, because I hear this a lot. Like, my metabolism slowed, my metabolism broke. It's still fairly common law, and I want to dispel it today because I've not personally done that on this channel. So let's get into it. Now, firstly, this is a really nice graphic of what the metabolism is composed of. This was included first originally in a study by Eric Trexler, I think it was, and he was talking about metabolism downregulations relating to diet. Now, this graphic has been used by a bunch of people. It's a very popular one for infographics. I'm sure you guys have seen it before, but this was pulled directly from the study, and I can talk you through what all this means. All right. So, firstly, your TDEE, your thermic daily energy, total daily energy expenditure, right? Total daily energy expenditure. That is how many calories you burnt on a given day. Okay, that includes everything. It includes the stuff that you did out and about. It includes anything it was just your body moving around. It is just your body surviving. It is everything. So let's break down what exactly it is. Now, we have two broad categories here. We have REE and we have NREE. REE is resting energy expenditure. Okay, so that is the calories you burn at rest. So essentially, if you were just bedbound, or less than that, you've bedbound and strapped down and sedated so you couldn't move, that is those calories. And as you can see, that's quite a lot. That's 70% of your total calories are actually you just surviving. All right, so that's quite a lot. Now, let's say, for example, your TDE is 3,000 calories. Mine is roughly there. So my body literally burns 2,000 calories just at rest, chilling, just relaxing, maxing and relaxing. And then I burn an extra 1,000 calories doing my various daily shenanigans that I do. Right, so REE is the resting energy expenditure, and that is comprised mostly of your BMR. So you hear about BMR a lot. It's not actually a number you should be that interested in tagging down exactly what it is, because it's fairly irrelevant. All for practical purposes you need to know is your TDEE. Now, the next bit is the most interesting bit, which is your non-resting energy expenditure. That is what you do not at rest. And we have the biggest portion of that is NEAT. Okay, that is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And what that means is that is kind of like your subconscious movement. So like you see my videos, I gesticulate with my hands quite a lot, right? Very Italian. So that is the stuff you do. Maybe you tap your foot. Maybe you're sat on the edge of the seat, you tap your foot. You always have that sort of stereotype of the really lean, wiry person who's always sat on the edge of the seat, tapping the foot, really kind of tense. That's what NEAT is. It's the sort of subconscious movement that you do, which burns calories. So listen, I'm literally doing it right now, waving my hands around, okay? So that is it. You can't really affect NEAT. And it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine that people say you should do steps to increase your NEAT. That's not technically true. That is not what NEAT is. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It is supposed to be it's like non-conscious, movement, essentially. So if your coach has got you doing 20,000 steps, like wake up call, that's exercise, right? No matter what you want to call it. But people like to say it's NEAT, but whatever. That's a side point. Let's get back to the topic. Then we've got TEF. TEF is another large portion of your TDEE. TEF is thermic effective food. Now, thermic effective food means this. Your body requires a certain amount of energy to actually digest the food. So you plonk the food in, it goes down your digestive tract, and to actually extract nutrients and extract energy from the food you eat, you've got to expend a certain amount of energy for the machinery in your body to move around and for you to extract that energy, all the magical processes that happen in our body. And that is TEF. Okay, that is thermic effective food. More food you eat, more TEF there is. And certain types of food, certain types of macros affect that. Protein being the famous example, where if you eat more protein, you have a higher TEF and you can automatically lose weight just by eating a ton of protein. It's actually quite magical. I'll go into that more in a moment. Next, we have probably the smallest indicator of where of actual TDE, the smallest proportion, the smallest percentage of total TDE is EAT, and that is exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, how mind-blowing is that? That represents the smallest amount of calories you burn across the entire day. So all those cardio classes you do, all that kind of stuff, like if that actually backfires and makes you want to eat more, it's potentially making you fatter. And I have known people to do this. People will literally do a cardio class, go, "Whoa, I'm knackered. Let's go to the chippy and get some fish and chips." Like that. Like you're not that guy, pal. That is wrong. We don't want to be doing that. So that is a breakdown of what these terms mean and what they are. So now let's talk a little bit about what people think happens when their metabolism slows. So people think when they diet, their metabolism slows. So people think when they diet or when they get older or whatever, you've heard the line. People say, "Oh, my metabolism's slowing down." People think it slows. Then they think it slows to the point where they stop losing weight, right? And some people take that a step further because they have to. People love taking it a step further. And they say, well, it's not just slow to the point where I've stopped losing weight. It's actually slow to the point where I'm actually gaining weight now. So somehow your metabolism has turned from this thing which burns calories to all of a sudden it's adding calories onto your frame somehow. I'm not sure how that works or how people think that works, but people actually believe this. Literally, people believe this. People say that, oh, you must be in starvation mode. You've got to eat more and that will burn more calories. Like, I don't know how people think that works. It's insane. It is literally insane. People actually believe in 2021 that if you eat so little, you start to gain weight. There's like some magical cutoff period where you go down your calories, you go down your calories, you go down your calories, boom, that's it. Narnia happens. You go through the cupboard and all of a sudden you start gaining weight. It's like, wow, I think it's like 88 miles per hour in Back to the Future. Something happens and it just sets your metabolism off and that's it. You just start piling on the weight. It doesn't make any sense. And if people actually sat and thought about it, they would realize it doesn't make sense. But the type of people who say stuff like that generally don't think very much. So there we go. And then it gets repeated and then it becomes fact. All right. So that's what people think happens. Now, what actually happens is this. So we have our BMR, which has a down regulation. It slows down. So the BMR, if you remember, is from the chart, is the largest portion of your total TDE. Okay, that's the largest portion. And the body will try and survive if it realizes it's in a calorie deficit. So it will have some down regulation. Now, that's not much. Okay, there's not much down regulation. The down regulation for that, I think I've seen it in the research as high as 25%. So for a guy like me, who's actually got a relatively high metabolism, about 3,000 calories for a TDE, that slowdown would be 25% of 2,000, about 500 calories. For somebody sat at home who's got a TDE of 2,000 calories, that would be a lot less, maybe more like 300 calories. And bear in mind, that's in the most extreme cases, okay? So if you've been just starving yourself months and months on end, there will be maybe a 25% down regulation of your BMR. And that is just 70% of your total TDE, okay? So it's not even 25% of your total metabolism. It's 25% of whatever your BMR is, all right? So the body will go into, it will try and survive, so it will down-regulate a little bit, but it doesn't just weirdly shut off. So that's the first thing that happens, but that doesn't represent a massive amount, and it's only usually more like a 10% reduction. So for a guy like me, that might be 200 calories of a reduction. For somebody at home, that might be more like 150 calories. That's more normal, that's more regular. Okay, so that accounts for a small bit of this slowdown in metabolism, which is quite crappy if you think about it, really, because if you're sat there and you've been dieting, let's say your maintenance is 3,000, all of a sudden you decide to cut at 2,500, or you go beyond that and you go to 2,000 calories, and you think, great, I'm going to lose tons of fat. Well, actually, within a couple of weeks, you're probably going to get some down regulation. So that 1,000 calorie deficit is no longer going to be worth 1,000 calories on a day-to-day basis. So it'll probably be worth a little bit less, but it's never going to outrun the actual deficit. So as long as you're in a deficit, you'll be fine. So if you just cut with less of a deficit, then your metabolism will naturally pump back up again. So anyway, next, NEAT. So that is the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. In general, we will move less subconsciously. Now, as you can see, There, you know that I've not been dieting recently. I finished my cut 2 months ago, 3 months ago, something like that. I think like 2 or 3 months ago. Anyway, now I'm gesticulating a lot more. I'm moving around a lot more, and so all of these are indicators that actually Faz is probably not on a cut, or either that or he's just massively high on caffeine. But yeah, anyway, I'm not high on caffeine. It's quite late over here. I am just full of energy like I normally would be because I'm not dieting. So if you have been dieting chronically for a while, what tends to happen is you do move around less subconsciously. Your NEAT goes down. All right. Now, so that's another thing that causes the metabolism to slow. Next thing is TEF. This one's kind of obvious. If you go from a diet where you're eating 3,000, 4,000, and if you're really lucky, then a few days you're eating 5,000 calories a week, and you go down to a nice sensible deficit of 2,500 or whatever, then you're eating less. So the energy required to digest that food is less. Ergo, your TEF is less, right? Makes sense. Then finally, your EAT is usually going to be lower because unless you are just starting exercise, you're probably going to be exercising with less duration and less intensity. Like that's always a struggle, like it is for everyone. It's a whole bodybuilder thing. It's like we do a lot to try and maintain our exercise intensity as we diet. So we'll even place food right directly in front of the workout or in the middle of the workout to try and have enough energy to make sure that the diet isn't affecting us negatively. And that's actually quite a good strategy for partitioning. We can talk about that in a moment. And also, finally, there's just a greater subconscious desire to eat more. If you're at a low body fat, let's say you're at a body fat you've never been at before, there will be a strong desire to eat more in some people. Not in everyone, but in some people. And so then you get tracking errors. So people just eat more and they kind of like, quote unquote, forget about it. Forget about it. And that is often what is actually happening when people think their metabolism slowed down and they're still not losing weight. They're just overeating on the sly. Now, in terms of what doesn't help the metabolism is eating many small meals to stoke the furnace. Like this is like old bodybuilding law. You should eat 6 meals a day to stoke the metabolic fire. It's absolute nonsense. Often what does happen, and maybe this often, if this works, the reason it works is it often gives us more energy. So if we have been really down in the dumps, adding a teeny tiny bit more food to give us more energy because we're eating more can help to raise our activity levels, can help to make us train in the gym a little bit harder. That can also help to increase energy expenditure. The other thing is it can help digestion. Like when people get low on calories, they tend to get a little bit constipated, so that can help there as well. What doesn't help also is this really, it's a really tired thing that people say they get EPOC from cardio. EPOC is this sort of like excess post-oxygen consumption, exercise post-oxygen consumption, something like that. Forget what it is. But anyway, it's basically the calories that you burn after an activity. People have this whole thing which says you get a lot of EPOC from cardio. You actually don't get very much from cardio at all. You get more EPOC from hard weightlifting. Think about it, right? Cardio, you're not actually breaking down any muscle tissue. You're just tiring yourself out. You're just literally burning calories. With weight training, you are actually breaking down muscle tissue. The body has to expend resources to fix the muscle tissue and to grow new muscle tissue. So EPOC doesn't come mostly from cardio. The biggest driver of EPOC is actually hard weightlifting. It just makes sense. Think about it. Next, we have what does help. So in terms of what does help, here are a couple of strategies. Firstly, eat higher amounts of protein. TEF is a big thing. If you go from eating, say, 2,000 calories or 3,000 calories of just like junk, okay, and that's holding your weight. If you go to eating 2,000 or 3,000 calories of really high protein stuff, you will automatically lose weight because it's worth quite a lot. The thermic effect of protein is worth quite a lot. So you can go from just ramping up your protein intake, keeping the same calories, and you will literally lose weight. It's almost magic. So that definitely does help. Another thing that helps long-term is build some muscle. So think about it this way. If you are currently 80 kilos, like 180 pounds, and you're skinny fat, and your natural appetite over the course of the last, 12 years has led you to being 180 pounds, but skinny fat, just imagine if you build 20 pounds of muscle. Your natural appetite might lend you back down to 180 pounds. Okay, eventually when you diet back down, but you would have built all this muscle. So you'll be 20 pounds more muscly with 20 pounds less fat. Ta-da! And then you don't have to maintain 160 pounds because that would probably suck if you naturally like to maintain 180. I think people need to think about this like that a lot more, because people think to themselves, okay, you know what? I'm 200 pounds now. I'm going to cut my body fat and I'll be like 150 pounds and life will be excellent. I'll be hunky dory. It's like, yeah, but that's a lot of pounds to maintain and hold off. Like, yeah, you can do it. The odd person can do it. But most people don't do that very well. Most people end up regaining the weight because trying to hold a weight which is 50 pounds lower than they have been in the past and is potentially very small for where they should be is quite difficult without a good degree of muscle mass. So the solution is build some muscle tissue. I can't imagine that will really be analogous to anyone on this channel because you all lift weights. You all lift weights heavy. But there are plenty of people out there who don't subscribe to my channel who have tried diets in the past, and I just thought, well, I'm just going to strip the weight off with lots of cardio, starve myself, and then boom, they get down to 150 pounds, snap some photos, and within months, they're back up 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, and potentially in a worse position than before because their level of muscle mass is lower as well. So build muscle. Basically, and I've said this before, I'll say it again one last time. Your dieting should be easier over time, not harder. If you have been, let's say you reach 40, 50, 60 years old, and your dieting is harder, you messed up. Like, you should have built enough muscle tissue at that point and not listen to these crazy cardio bunnies, wasted time on that. You should have built up enough muscle mass at that point where actually you are able to sustain yourself on a higher level of calories. Dieting should be easier in the long term, not harder. You should be leaner in the long term, not fatter. Right? When you're at the beginning of your life, and let's say you started off very sedentary, you didn't have much muscle mass, your first goal is to build. It's not to stay shredded. One of the reasons why it's easier for me to stay lean these days than it was in my teens is because I spent all of my 20s while all my friends was trying to stay shredded and stay lean. I spent them all lifting heavy and being fat. Right? So I'm benefiting from that now. So yeah, people normally do the opposite. They normally just try and stay skinny, and when they're older, they just end up ballooning up because you naturally get lazy as you're older, and so you just don't be as you're just not as lean. So things you can do is eat more protein and train hard. Sounds simple, and it is, but most people do the exact opposite. So finally, yeah, do cardio. Being a bit more active can help you eat a bit more. And there are various means of appetite control, but this video is going on a little bit, so I will call it there. And perhaps we'll discuss that in the next one. But that is some of the stuff that does help. So I will call it there. Thank you all. If you've got it this far and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Pop any questions or comments down below, and I will talk to you next time. But in the meantime, keep smashing the weights, keep lifting hard. Right? The meatheads will inherit the earth. We've got it right. We have got it right. Build as much muscle mass as possible. Not the cardio bunnies, not anything else. Like, we've got it right. Build the muscle, and that will sustain you for a lifetime. Right, folks, take it easy.